Welcome to the Trillium Show. So this week we're going to kind of go through something that I'm sure happens in many houses, apartments, condos. Every week after maybe a glass or two or too many of wine, where you look in the mirror and you start noticing something you hadn't seen before. You kind of pull back on your jawline and you're like, oh man, is that a jowl that's starting? And if you're my age, if you're 50, in your 40s, your early 60s, that realization can be difficult to comprehend. And when that happens, what most people typically do is go to Google. And so today I'm going to kind of walk you through that process, kind of how you get from point A to point B. And we will then in kind of part two of this, we'll talk about what works. Welcome to the Trillium Show. My name is Dr. Jason Hall, a board-certified plastic surgeon here in Knoxville, Tennessee. And this show is designed to help you get tips to improve your mind, your body, and your life. And today we're going to talk about early jowls or jowls in general, and then follow that up with what we can do. Let's say you're 45, 50, and you Google search, hey, I've got jowls. What do I do? You're going to get a response that's probably got 20 different things: lasers, creams, fillers, radiofrequency. And if you read those, if you take a dive down the rabbit hole and read the fine print, all the results say results may vary. Translate that. It may work, but it may not. We'll get into the what works, what doesn't, and why here in a minute. But the realization, when you first have that realization that you're starting to change, you're starting to age a little bit, you kind of think, is this really normal? And yes, we age. It's just a fact of life. And you Google search that, it's going to confirm it. Yes, you age. Type that into Chat GPT, is going to say, yeah, you definitely get older. I'm testament to that. This wasn't always gray, nor was this. So it happens to everybody. So you kind of come to that realization, you start getting practical, like, well, what works? What's the best treatment for jowls if you're in your 40s and 50s? And what you'll see is that the search terms that you get, and I did this, so I know, and I advertise on the internet, so I know doubly, is that half of the things out there are non-surgical and half of the things out there are surgical. And if you just kind of do a cursory examination of that stuff, you'll see that none of the descriptions of actually what those things are is really clear. And so you start kind of picking and choosing things and saying, it is a mini facelift for jowls, when you're in your 40s, something that's worth it. And the important part of that search, like in anything in plastic surgery, is the pictures, is the before and after photos. And you start seeing people who their before picture looks a little bit like you, and their after picture looks awesome. Hopefully it looks awesome. It doesn't look weird. They don't look like they've been standing in a wind tunnel. And so you start thinking of surgery as like, maybe it's not something that's nuts. Maybe I'm not nuts for thinking that a mini facelift or a facelift is something worth considering. But you also look at yourself and you're like, wait a minute, I'm not old enough for that. Am I? This realization can really be enlightening, because you start seeing, and the trend right now, and this is like winter of 2026, the trend right now is for younger patients to undergo surgery before their grandmothers. For the moms to have the facelift, not what we traditionally think of as facelift being a surgery for the grandma, and so you kind of come to this realization that you might not be too young, you might actually be behind. You may be behind the curve. And now that's very individual. I'm not trying to sell anybody who's 40 a facelift. That's not the point here. But that realization kind of leads you to take a little bit deeper dive, and you start looking at the differences, because you see a lot of young patients getting neck lifts now, especially the deep neck lifts. We've done shows about that. We can link those in the descriptions. So you start saying, well, maybe a neck lift is really all I need. Instead of the facelift, instead of the mini, maybe just a neck lift is where we need to go. And if you've listened to this show, if you've listened to the episodes about facelifts and neck lifts, you know this already. You're ahead of the curve. But if you haven't, you discover with a little bit of a deep dive on the internet that your jowls and your neck are actually connected. And you can't really address one without addressing the other. And that can be a little disheartening, but at the same time, you're learning more. You're kind of learning more about, the what's, hows, and whys of what you see in the mirror, which is what we try and really push on this show when it comes to surgeries, is that the diagnosis part of it is actually more important than the treatment part, where the treatment part kind of follows naturally from the diagnosis. So then you kind of start getting scared. You're like, well, what is this going to look like? You start looking around for, recovery pictures. And this is where things can really get interesting and kind of scary, because, you get on Reddit, you get on, Facebook, and you see, the things that pop to the top are the sensational stories of, people having horrid complications and things like that. But there are, some sites, and I've got a patient that was gracious enough to share her journey. You see pictures, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 7, day 14, day 21, day 50 something. And you kind of start thinking, okay, 2 weeks. Can I hide for 2 weeks? Can I take time off for 2 weeks? If I work remotely, can I just put my profile picture up on Zoom instead of being on video? That leads you to start looking for surgeons. And so you start looking for local surgeons. You start saving before and after galleries. You start taking screenshots. And that's when the search kind of gets real. That's when you start, diving into a surgeon's social media to see if he or she is somebody that you get along with, that you like. Because that's probably one of the more important things in choosing a surgeon, is that you actually like them. And that you guys get along. You think you can get along because you obviously don't know them by watching social media. And you start to realize, you're considering this. You're really considering this. And, if this kind of search history, if this little scenario sounds familiar, you're not alone. I decided to do this show because people talk about this. My patients talk about their kind of step-by-step journey of how they came to sit in my office. I ask everybody at the end, why are you here? What is it that really made you come in? And a lot of them will share this. It's an emotional journey for sure. And it's something that happens a lot. So if this is you, you're not alone. And the next part of this, we'll talk about what works for jowls, for neck laxity, what doesn't, what is worth the money, what's a total waste of money, and how not to get over-treated and look fake. So like the end of all shows, if you've got any questions, send me a comment, send me a DM at Dr. Jason Hall on Instagram. Leave a comment below, and we'll see you on the next show.